Good morning, everybody. It's Dr. Antonio with the weekly live Monday morning talks. And today we're going to talk about fall. And fall has been transitioning for some time in the past few weeks, not even just because the official date on September 22nd. It's funny how, as humans, we give the specific date for some things like this. Nature doesn't really care about the dates. Nature does what it does when it does it. And we just catch up as part of it. And so even prior to September 22nd, the air quality started changing, if you notice that. The environment started changing, if you notice that. Really, like, if you slow down to pay attention, you start to see what nature's doing at any given point in time. And, one thing I would definitely want to talk about is the air quality and how, just a month ago, the air at 70 degrees was very different than the air at 70 degrees now at the end of September. And, so if you have that ceiling fan on or that window fan or even an air conditioner on still on those days, you'll notice the air is cooler, much more cooler than they would have, than it would have been during the summertime or even in June when the transition from spring to fall, summer was happening. So these are subtle cues to indicate that there are things changing in the environment with the climate. In the environment, we see the foliage changing or the flowers starting to dry up a little bit, or roses starting to thin out, or an increase of birds because they're trying to get themselves ready for the winter months, and so they're sort of getting ready for hibernation. So they're going to forage and kind of build cocoons and nests and things like that are going to keep things warm and thermoregulated. But as humans, as we're going through, as a species on this planet, the transition of the seasons, it's important to notice what we notice. So, are you feeling dryness in your skin? Is your sleep changing? Are you sleeping a little bit more? Or are you sleeping even less? These are indicators of more or less what your constitution might be, or what some of the imbalances might be. And, in Chinese medicine and in Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Ayurvedic medicine, there's an understanding that the transition of the seasons, which is called Sandhi, transitions of the seasons are the windows where people get sick very often. If you look back at your own health history and you see, wow, around September, October, around maybe May, June, and maybe around January, February, you might have gotten that extra cold or that extra allergy or that extra stomach ache or something like that. Or those sleep issues might have increased. Then you could start looking back and say, oh yeah, it happened to occur during those times of year. Really, if we pay attention to our health history and we pay attention to what the weather's doing at any given point in time, we start to make some correlations to what we're doing as part of nature and what we're feeling as a byproduct of when we're not really aligned with such things. So, nature's preparing for its own transition, how things are just getting ready to go into hibernation. And, we're the human species, so we're thinking, well, we're above this nature thing and we're just going to do our own thing. We don't care how late we stay up or how much we sleep in and all these things. We're the only ones that kind of consider things like that. And that's actually where we get sick more often, because we're not really following the seasons. We're not following this daily cycle. We're not aligned with the circadian rhythms. And these are the precursors, the nidana in Ayurveda, the precursors towards becoming ill. And we want to prevent this. So that means being aware of what are the things that cause us to be ill. So on those cooler days during the transition of the season, if you're still wearing, flip-flops and shorts and tank tops when it dropped down to 48 at night and, 61 during the day, unless you're a person that generally runs very high with heat, you should start putting a layer on those particular days. How we transition through the seasons in these fluctuations of temperature and even just weather patterns where it might be cold and damp one day, cold and dry another day, hot and moist another day, and hot and dry another day, as we align ourselves with that day and its qualities. Even in transition of the season, it's that sort of gray area And so as we're in that gray area, we treat each day in its own unique way. So on that hotter day, then we have those lighter, easier to digest foods. And on those cooler days, we have a little bit more of those heavier, warming foods. Because as we go into the winter months, we start increasing some of the warmth by taking in more warm things, more teas, more ciders, more baked goods, more fried goods in some cases, and you follow the weather pattern in your own geography. And so day by day, as we're transitioning, we just pay attention. There's an interesting, rule of physics that we talk about: centripetal forces and centrifugal forces. Centripetal is where the energy kind of goes towards the center area, and the centrifugal force kind of goes towards the expanded, away from the center area. And so as we come into hot months, the summer months, digestion is actually at its weakest because of the centrifugal force, that the blood is leaving the abdominal cavity, and the stomach is just not going to be as strong to process heavier foods because the body's trying to keep itself cool. So it leaves the center and kind of goes to the periphery to kind of really release the heat. Heat is expansive, right? And then as we come into the colder months, then we have the reverse effect where it's centripetal and the blood starts to circulate around the abdominal cavity. It's like, I tell many of my patients, think of it this way. You have a house, and in the summertime, the windows are open, the doors are open, ventilation increases to remove the heat from inside the house and cause it to disperse, to cool itself down. Then, if we want to add we have the advent of fans and air conditioners and things like that to support cooling down the inside. Similarly, in the winter months, we close the windows and the doors, and then we turn up the furnace. So think of the stomach like a furnace, and that it's turning up. That means it's going to get stronger. That means whatever you put in there, for the most part, depending on a person's constitution, and depending on where they're at within their constitution, gets stronger. So you can actually eat more things and properly during the summertime, in the wintertime versus the summertime. And if you're following this, you'll notice for yourself. This is sort of like how we do, the scientific methodology. We test out these things and we find out what the outcome is for ourselves. When I see patients and I make suggestions, it's not that I'm, coming out of the air with these ideas. These are substantiated, amazing scientific principles established by Ayurvedic medicine that I'm just reiterating and sharing with all of you so that you can have your goals of optimal health, so that you can live life more optimally. Because in essence, when you are living in a better state of health, you can enjoy life more to its fullest when your body is along for the ride and feeling content. When your body is being weighed down by ailments, then it doesn't feel so good. Then it kind of pulls on the mind for many people. And these are things that we can take into account and take care of within Ayurvedic system of medicine by really just making modifications and adjustments to our daily lifestyle. It really comes down to diet and lifestyle and making sure that we can have a better sense of health and well-being. What are the choices we're making? How are we aligning ourselves with nature? How are we really aligning ourselves with our own body and having an awareness of like, wow, whenever I eat something heavy and I already feel heavy, I feel more heavy. Well, then maybe the opposite effect is to eat things lighter and easier to process so that your body can lighten itself up. It's difficult to work with the body or within a body that feels really heavy and frumpy and you're kind of dragging it around. And so you want to be mindful of these physical cues that your body gives you to help yourself to align to your own health, because your body is giving you cues through symptoms. So as you're transitioning through the season and you're thinking, okay, it's a cooler day, so I'll put maybe a layer on, maybe a little bit of a long sleeve, maybe some slacks, or pants, or something like that, to start containing the heat, then that's a better way to start preparing yourself for the transition into the season and minimizing your chance of actually getting sick. So if you're eating cold stuff on a cold day, usually that's not ideal because you're taking in that cold element and you're bringing it into the body. And again, unless you run on high heat regularly, then that substance, that cold thing, is going to be contraindicated. You're going to just feel colder. and it makes its way through the tissues so that this cold actually goes deeper into the body and lasts longer because you're adding to it day by day by day by doing these kinds of practices. So on warm days, still eat what you're eating during the summer, and watch this seasonal change of the vegetables that are occurring. The farms are already shifting out of a lot of things, and wheat is starting to increase this time of year, which is a good time of year to actually introduce ourselves to wheat and these other grains, because that's when they start to come fruition. Apples, pears, at least here in the East Coast in New England, there are certain things geographically that nature produces that is appropriate for us in that local culture. It really is kind of that simple. It's like, what's growing locally? Well, I know avocados don't grow in the New England area, not normally anyway. And, so it has to be imported from somewhere. And so then I have to think about, well, what's the climate that it's coming into? What's the climate that it came from? And is it a match? That's why avocados taste amazing in the summertime, because they generally grow in that climate. And in the wintertime, they taste slightly different. Even if it's brought from another, state or another country, the fruit itself knows, the vegetable itself knows where it is in its own inherent existence within nature. It just knows. It doesn't have to think about such things. As humans, we have this amazing complex mind that we can decide for ourselves and make information available to us and decipher such things. So when you're transitioning to season, notice what's coming around, like the apples and the pears in the New England area, and we get some winter kale, and we get some winter spinach, and maybe some winter arugula. And we start introducing our diet to that. That's part of the dietary alignment. And always gauging what is your digestion feeling like. And a few series ago, I discussed digestion and knowing like the inputs, the outputs, and how like digestion appears when it's properly metabolizing. So maybe review those, that would be great. But in general, for today's purpose, knowing that when you're feeling good in your digestive system, when you're having minimal agitation or symptoms like gas or bloating or constipation or diarrhea and things like that, then you're in a generally good area, and then there's always this room for improvement and fine-tunement. And the more you improve your digestion, the more you align with your proper eating habits, the least likely you'll get sick. And, the end goal is not to get sick. But it's inevitable because as we're human, we're going to have moments that we get sick because certain stresses in our lives we can't avoid. And, we could do our best with that, so we could always get sicker than we do when we get sick. If we have better practices in place, and that minimizes the extremity, that minimizes the intense impact that health can progress into. And, many of my patients that come in, especially during this time of year, there's a little bit of a hiccup because you're going from eating or sleeping or drinking or exercising improperly or working at inappropriate work times. And, as you reprogram, it takes a little bit of time. And, but I can say that as you put this effort in now, today, this year, this month, this week, the next year, this time, you'll notice a significant change, which is what I love seeing when I work with people, because their health has improved exponentially within a year of working together with me and working with Ayurveda. It's just amazing that way. And so we start now, today, in the middle of the transition of the fall season, and to start eating the seasonal foods, the local foods, adjusting with the climate, adjusting with the temperature, and enjoying each day as much as we can, just making these mindful choices. Sometimes they're hard, especially when you're not used to making these kind of choices. It's like a foreign language, but the end result is you want to feel good. So you start today. It's an investment today. So if you want to feel good tomorrow, it's what you do today. If you want to feel better from yesterday, it's what you do today. It's the one thing that you could do today that you could start working on, making it simple. Don't try to do such radical changes overnight. Take one thing, start working with it, develop a consistent pattern with it, and then when it substantiates itself, it becomes more concrete, Then go on to the next thing and just build slowly on that, so that you don't overwhelm yourself, because if you overwhelm yourself, then it's like overeating, and then you just throw up all over the place, and then you just stop doing whatever you're really meant to do to help you. So be simple, be easy on yourself, and I would love to work with you. And feel free to private message me or email me. I'll provide the link to my website here in Philadelphia, and I work with people all around the globe, which is exciting because of the internet. We have this amazing capacity through the digital world to reach out to other people around the world. And, except for like adjusting for different time zones, it's workable. You're worth it, and you deserve to be thriving in your health and happy in your life and feeling an expandedness and a fullness and a vitality and an inspiration and feeling great about yourself. Okay, so if you have any questions, by all means, send me a message, and I look forward to hearing from you. And stay tuned, because we'll be moving through the seasons with some other talks on the seasons and some talks on food again and other really fun topics. And stay tuned, I also teach a yoga class twice a week, Eastern Time, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So, have a great rest of your morning, everyone. Happy Monday, and I'll talk to you guys soon.